So Lauren has started recording just for everybody to be aware. If anybody wanted to change their name on their Zoom account or take their video off, if you have it on, you're welcome to do so. We do post these videos to YouTube. So we want to make sure that you have any privacy that you would like to have. And then of course, thank you so much to Westward Whiskey for supporting us this week. So I'll hand it over to you.
Cool. So I'm Laura and this is Diana. Yeah, so I guess I'll start by telling y'all a little bit about myself and what I do, and also why I'm equipped to speak to these things. So my name is Laura Green. I'm in Chicago, Illinois. I am a beverage professional and have been for some time, but I'm also a licensed professional counselor. So I went to DePaul University for a long time, did a lot of school, and am a licensed therapist. I am not practicing as a licensed therapist right now, only because my research interests are in the mental health and well-being of hospitality professionals. And I had to make sort of a choice of like, am I a therapist doing the work from the outside in, or am I an educator doing the work, my God, from the inside out? And I landed on the best way to approach this would be from the inside out. So here I am, still working in the business, but also, providing education and information about these things. That being said, this is not therapy. Even though I am a therapist, this is not therapy. I kind of have to say that from a safety standpoint. And I'll also say that here are some resources for you. This is pretty, like what we're talking about today is like pretty light, but if for some reason you feel something that's a little bit more than you can manage, these are some resources for you, different helplines. And also as we talk about this, and this slide is at the end as well, these are some resources to help find a therapist. As we talk about like emotional intelligence and learning yourself, therapy is a really wonderful way to do that. And so if you're interested in talking to a therapist or getting that started, these are some really great resources. Inclusive Therapists especially is really, really wonderful. The Open Path Collective that you see, those are all low cost therapists who are offering like sliding scale stuff. So like, I think it ranges from $30 to $45, and you can search by zip code, but really with COVID happening and everything being virtual, it kind of doesn't matter anymore, which is kind of cool. But yeah, so there's some resources for you. Let's talk a little bit about emotional intelligence. So like when we are like sick, when we have like a stuffy nose, and you can tell the difference between, if that's allergies or if it's a cold or maybe if it's the flu coming on, and that comes from experience and taking time to reflect on what it was that your body felt like, what happened after feeling that thing. So you're essentially, as you grow up and as you grow older, you are collecting data about what your experience is like, so that you can feel very early on, like, I feel this tickle in my nose, that's allergies. And I know that's allergies because I know what allergies feel like. So those are things that we learn within our bodies so that we can help protect ourselves from illness, so that we can identify if there's pain, what's happening, and then it allows us to treat that or intervene early if we have to. Like, okay, my nose is a little stuffy, so I'm gonna go take my allergy medicine. The same thing is true for when we learn our emotional reactions and our behavioral reactions. So emotional intelligence is really, really important, because we can feel early that a reaction to something or something might not sit super well with us. And the more we can learn ourselves, the more we can understand where that's coming from and why and what it turns into, the better we can intervene so that we continue to live in an emotional space within ourselves that is healthy as possible. I also want to say, as we talk about emotions, happy is not always going to be the goal. Like, we all want to be happy. Like, it's really great being happy. I very much enjoy experiencing joy. But we have a whole rainbow of emotions available to us for a reason. And within our understanding of our emotional life, within our emotional intelligence, those sadder moments, those more depressive moments, those fearful moments, or those angry moments are really, really, really important, because they are tools for us to cue us into what our experiences are like. So when we talk about emotional intelligence, there are really 5 areas of emotional intelligence. There's your self-awareness of like what you are feeling, what you are experiencing, your connection with others through empathy, because empathy is a way that we can like kind of feel the energy of another person. And it's pretty cool if you kind of move through the world empathetically, because you can sort of really start to train yourself and build the skill of feeling what the other person is feeling as a source of connection, but also then being able to acknowledge, I feel what they're feeling and it's making me feel a certain way. What's up with that, right? That those are kind of like those pieces of when we get either a good vibe from somebody or a not so great vibe from somebody. Motivation, understanding what motivates us. And within this week, I think motivation is, especially coming off what Amy presented last week, motivation is a huge piece of like when we talk about creating change within our community, when we talk about creating change within our personal systems and how we move through our world, like what is it that motivates us to do certain things? Like, and a lot of psychological theorists will say we are motivated by fear, or we're motivated by anxiety, or we're motivated by a sexual drive, or whatever that is. Like different theorists say different things. And I think that's because we are all motivated for very, very different reasons. And finding that within yourself is really very important, so that you can really hone in then on, this is what motivates me. If I'm trying to achieve this situation, I know that this motivates me here. So I'm going to root my processes within that so that I can easier achieve that in line with what is best for me. And we'll talk more about that on Wednesday. Self-regulation, that's like your discipline. Like where are your personal boundaries, not between you and other people, but also between you and yourself, you and what you crave. Like when something is really, really great for you, or when something is really good for a time and then you cut it, understanding those pieces are really, really important as well. And then your social skills, your social interactions, how you interact with other people, your self-esteem. And I'll say a quick thing about self-esteem, because I think especially as a woman who was born in the 1980s and went through the whole like raise girls self-esteem concept in the 90s, self-esteem is not how you feel about yourself. That's more like self-efficacy. Self-esteem, especially from a social psychological standpoint, self-esteem is how you perceive others value you. Okay, so I'm going to say that again. Self-esteem is how you perceive and measure how other people value you. So it's your measurement of how you play a role within your community, how somebody feels about you, right? So in the 90s, when they were doing this massive push for, to raise little girls' self-esteem, that kind of wasn't the right language, because then we're just trying to raise our evaluation of how we fit into our community, of others perceive. Really what we want to do is raise people's self-efficacy, certainly understand where we fit within our social circle and how we are serving our communities, for sure. But that's not quite, I don't think that was the goal of what they were doing. But so when I say self-esteem, I'm talking about how do you interact with other people? How are you measuring your impact on other people or your impact on your community? And also feeling like something that I just did, how did that impact that other person? What effect did I have on them? Those are all components of having either high or mid-level or low emotional intelligence. And I think, certainly hope, as I go through these, that you're seeing a bit of a, maybe connecting some dots in how either you've interacted with other people or how other people have interacted with you. If we look at like interpersonal relationships, like you can kind of identify someone who doesn't have very high emotional intelligence, because there's not an acuity when it comes to like, this person, I said this and this person understood that, or didn't understand that, or, you know, whatever, or maybe someone was very quick to anger, but they were actually sad. And I'm actually going to talk a little bit about that primary and secondary emotional responses. So this happens a lot in dudes, like a lot in dudes, and especially, and it starts very young in the teenage years. So if something happens and you have an emotional response, so many of us have a primary emotional response. With dudes, it usually comes to anger because of like socially composed, and I should say imposed structures of this is what men do and this is what women do. For men, we often see them, you know, falling into anger when they actually might be feeling sadness or fear or loss or sorrow or so many other really colorful emotions, but they're very quick to anger because that becomes the default, because that's what's normalized. You know, in women, it might be sadness, that when we're angry, we start with sadness, but really underneath there's a lot of anger, you know. Does that make sense to you all? I just want to check in as I talk about this. Sure, no. I knew it. But I'll say that, so that's really interesting, Alessa, I hope I said your name right, because in my personal journey of emotional intelligence and sort of exploring all of those, you know, different facets of my emotional life, like I grew up defaulting to, you know, sadness or tears or whatever. And then as I started to explore other parts of my emotional life, I definitely started defaulting to anger. And like I made the joke about the Hulk of like, my secret is I'm always angry, you know, which still might be true, but I, you know, more in my later 20s, I got very quick to default to anger. But all of these things take a lot of time and some practice for sure, and building that self-awareness to experience something, take a breath of like, what is happening? What am I feeling? What am I really feeling? And then you can start to address issues, either within yourself or with other people. Is this making sense? I just want to also like check in with you all. If you could give me like either a thumbs up or a yes on the chat or something. Thumbs up. Dope. Super cool. Very good. So ways to, all of that being said, I hope that makes sense about what emotional intelligence is. How do you build emotional intelligence, right? Like how like where to even begin? Like it's such a broad thing. And I'll also say that it is a lifelong process for a few, oh, what have I done? For a few reasons. The first reason that it's a lifelong process is because you are constantly evolving and changing, and something that might have severely affected you at one point in your life doesn't affect you nearly as much later on in your life. So you've maybe adapted to different levels of stress, or you've resolved some trauma within your life, so it doesn't dig into a wound in the same way. Or, you know, maybe it's something that used to bring you a lot of joy and now doesn't entice you as much anymore. So you're always evolving as a human being, and your interests are always evolving, and you're adapting and you're growing. So keeping track of your emotional intelligence and keeping a track of what your emotional life is, who you are and what you need, is a process that never ends. I don't know if you guys can hear my cat, but he's over here like howling. Bro, chill out. Anyway, another reason that it's an ongoing process is because you as a human being, as an individual, are just a wealth of person, right? Like our emotional depths are unknown, you know, and on one hand, it's important to sort of simplify our emotional life to like break down and like easily categorize these things. At the same time, you could keep digging and digging and digging and digging, and you'll never hit the bottom, which is actually kind of cool. Like you can look at it one way as being like terribly daunting, you know, and like very frustrating, or it's just an ongoing, beautiful process that you live your life to learn yourself and to know yourself better and to keep finding facets of yourself that maybe you hadn't seen before or really, explored before. And what an exciting concept, and what an exciting way to move through your life, that as you learn and grow, you are coming closer and closer and closer to the core of yourself and who you are. And like I mentioned earlier, that includes the good and maybe the bad. I don't know if anybody does any like woo-woo spiritual stuff, but like those shadow pieces that are important to explore as well. I just learned what that was, and I'm like so into it, and I love the language of like doing that shadow work. I think sometimes we steer away from addressing the things that are either scary or painful, or like the Tupperware in the back of your refrigerator that like you really need to open, but you like don't really want to open, but once you do, you just feel so much better. That anxiety is gone. That's kind of part of that shadow work. So in terms of identifying ways to build this self-awareness, to build this emotional intelligence, journaling. So like, I'll be real, I would shy away from recommending journaling only because of that sort of like Pinterest pop psych situation. I don't want people to see journaling as like the only aspect of how to build these things. However, it is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful tool to reflect on something. Like, I mean, I have actually my journal sitting right here, and some of my journal entries are literally two sentences long of like, I just wanted to note this down. This is something that I felt. And then that's all I have to write. I don't have to be like, dear diary, blah, 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 blah. And then this happened. And then this happened. It doesn't necessarily have to be that. You can be quite verbose if you want to, but journaling is your own. Journaling can also, I'm going to skip the therapy bit for a second, but journaling can also come in other forms. It doesn't have to be like a write down situation. It can be, making music. It can be creating art. It could be just so many different things. So it doesn't have to be a writing down situation, but providing yourself some sort of outlet to process your feelings and your emotions or process your day, it can be incredibly helpful and raise your awareness in a big way. Because also you can go back and start to find themes of, okay, this happened and then this happened and then I acted like that. Ugh, maybe that's something to explore. Talking with friends and family. So if you have trusted folk in your life that you can have candid but gentle but real conversations with about what your relationship looks like, how they feel when they're around you, how you feel when you're around them, that not only builds trust within your interpersonal relationships, but it will also give you a lot of data, like a lot of insight into how you move through the world. Because if we take a look back, a big part of emotional intelligence is your empathy and your social skills. So I'm a firm believer that it's through other people that we grow and heal. It's not because of other people. Like, it's not like other people are there to save us and we're not there to save them, but it's through our interpersonal relationships and building trust and growing together with our friendships, romantic, our mentors, our mentees. These are all ways that we can grow and learn through our interactions with each other. And the more self-knowledge that we have and self-awareness and emotional intelligence we have, the richer those relationships are going to be. Is this making sense? Can I get a thumbs up from y'all? Like, everyone doing okay? Or not thumbs up if you're like, nah. Cool. Very, very cool. Awesome. Nice. All right, great. So meditation, and I'll talk about meditation for a second, in the sense that this does not mean that you have to get your yoga mat out. This does not mean you need to get some crystals and start chanting or anything like that. What I mean by meditation is finding some sort of a time and space that you can just exist. and just be without any kind of massive distraction. So that could be, you know, doing a bunch of sun salutations and getting on your yoga mat and closing your eyes and trying to blank your brain out, right? That definitely could be that. But it can also it can also be in the form of running, you know, taking some time, or exercising. Just a space where you can create just something for yourself that you can turn off. For me, when I'm allowed, I love to get in the pool and swim like 1.5 miles, because when I'm in the pool, I can't have headphones in. I can't have any, it's just me. I turn on my watch and it counts my laps, and it's just me going and going and going. And it forces me to be there only with myself. And, you know, in those meditative times when I've been swimming, that gives me, I've had some of the most revelating experiences of like, just, you know, thinking about my relationships, or thinking about something that happened in that day, or whatever. And then, so whatever your meditative process might look like, and that might include music. I know for a lot of people, it's really nice to just like listen to music and connect with that music and chill out and, you know, kind of find themes of what you're listening to. That could be a really, really helpful thing for people. But yeah, whatever that looks like for you, that's also part of building your emotional intelligence and self-knowledge. What works for you, right? And it's going to take a little bit of practice to find it if you haven't already. Like we can take cues and suggestions from like influencers, or, you know, the Instagram therapists or whoever, but those are not the end all be all answers for you, right? Like you can say like, okay, they recommended this, I'm going to give it a go. But then it's going to be up to you to take some stock of yourself to say, was that helpful for me? Is that something that might continue to be helpful for me? But also being ready to walk away from something that maybe hasn't been especially helpful, if that makes sense. And then you can evolve into something else. Again, this is like an ongoing forever process, you know, which either can be frustrating or it can be wonderful. It's just a matter of how you frame things. The last thing I want to talk a little bit about is going to therapy. And therapy is dope. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a therapist, but as someone who engages in therapy, it is so helpful just to like help process things, to get another perspective from somebody, fingers crossed, an unbiased perspective. Your therapist should be coming in with as little bias as possible, or the bias is towards your autonomy and helping you sort these things. But having someone there to hold you accountable, to just kind of help, like I call it bumper bowling. Like you're throwing the ball down the lane, but your therapist like kind of puts the bumpers by the gutters and just like boop boop no whoop, whoop, like just kind of help guide you. Another really wonderful thing about therapy is that you are the operator. So the person that is going to therapy is like the driver. You are the one doing the work. Again, your therapist is there just to bumper bowl you, but it should be a safe space for you to go and explore some things that you want to be exploring. So like, you know, I'm seeing these patterns in my relationships. I want to explore that a little bit more. Every time someone says something to me about X, I go and drink like 2 bottles of wine. I want to explore that a little bit more. So then you start like, you know, doing that little dive, that excavation almost, if you will, to figure out why these things are happening. And then also figure out what makes you happier, what brings you joy, what are the systems in your life that elevate your sense of self, your self-worth. You know, what are some habits that you engage in? Like, what are the habits that you engage in when you are at your tip top, when you're at your best, right? So finding those things, it's not always going to be about, these are the things I want to change, I want to change, I want to change. It's also, these are the things that are helpful to me. You know, even something that has occurred to me quite recently from a personal standpoint in how I address changes in my life, or I address things that maybe are less desirable, is to sort of like flip it a little bit. Because I had this like, okay, here we go. I was journaling and I started writing down all the things that I didn't really like about how I was behaving, or maybe some things that I wanted to change or things that were concerning for me. And then I was like, wait a gosh darn second. What if I switched that and started writing down all the things that I love? When am I at my best? I'm at my best when I get up and go for a run or ride my bike. I'm at my best when I go to bed with an empty sink. All my dishes are clean. I'm at my best when I wake up at this time. I'm at my best when I reach out to friends more. I'm at my best when, and, you know, and then taking that and reframing it of like, okay, I want to fill my day with more of that, so that there's not really room for these shadow pieces, right? For these other pieces that maybe aren't contributing to my personal growth in the best way. But I can't make those decisions on how I behave unless I start exploring it. Is that making sense for y'all? See, a chat came in. Yes, to an empty. Yes. I'm not always the best at it, but it does feel really good, you know, to not, you know, just basic chores and like something. And here's another thing, like something that I actively know about myself, and this might be true for you, it might not, is like when I live in a clean house, I am at my best. I don't necessarily like doing my chores, but I know that I'm at my best if I'm operating in a super clean house. So that's something, that's self-awareness that I know about myself, that I need to take care of it so that I can function at my best. I'm trying to train my husband to do this too. Yeah, I mean, clean sink, happy LP. Yeah, I mean, but it's like, it's not always easy, you know, but if I'm living in a messy house and I don't have the self-awareness that my messy house can be triggering for me, or I can't be as functional if my place is a little bit unkept, like that's when I would start to spiral a little bit more. And that's when like depressive things start coming in. You know, and another thing about that, and I know I'm kind of coming up on time, is what you can also start to explore is, it's the new hangry. Another thing that you can start to explore is when you start engaging in certain behaviors, what is at the beginning of, right? So, you know, something that I would work on with clients and I actively work on with my therapist is like, what are the things that start happening before the depression comes in? What are the things that start happening before, let's say if someone's like bipolar, before a hypomanic episode? How can we identify those before it happens and intervene early so that you're not experiencing that? And that's all part of emotional intelligence. That's all part of that self-knowledge skill building. And, you know, therapy is super, super helpful for that. But mostly at the end of the day, combining like all 5 of these things, finding a way to journal, whatever that looks like for you, working with a therapist when you need to, having some sort of a creative outlet. And your creative outlet might be, you know, exploring booze and cocktails. Like we all, I think, work in the drinks world. It could be that. That might not be also the best situation because that also overlaps with work. So finding a creative outlet that doesn't necessarily overlap with work is a really, really great way to explore yourself, your needs, your joy. You know, it's essentially like getting a creative hobby. You know, talking with friends and family is absolutely integral to personal growth, you know, and finding space and time for yourself to work on that on your own in quiet. You know, all of these things in conjunction with each other are going to set you up really well to increase your emotional intelligence, your self-knowledge. So then you have a really solid roadmap of yourself that you know what's happening, and then you can put yourself in situations where you're going to be at your best. Does that make sense? I think that's all I got. Any questions? Yeah, no? I'm going to stop. Oh, wait, I'm not going to stop sharing because I want to show this one more time. These are the the, the therapy resources for you. And all of these, I believe you can search by zip code, and then you can search even by like the modality in which the therapist works. If you're looking for cognitive behavioral therapy or some other sort of therapy, interpersonal or relational, whatever, it's a really great tool that you can filter down into. Now I'm gonna stop sharing. But yeah, that's all I got. Alex, Lauren?
This was so wonderful. Thank you so much, Laura.
Yeah, did you learn something? Did everybody, I hope everyone learned
I feel
something.
like I'm learning from you, even when we're just talking about your haircut. Yeah, I'm so excited for the rest of the week and to kind of see how these 3 courses like build off of each other. And I think like this was just a great place to start setting some really great intentions and looking inward a little bit. So
yeah. And so I'd love to see you all back on Wednesday. We're going to take all of these, there's probably going to be a quick review if in case there's some newbies, but we'll take all of these, we'll take all of these concepts and build off of them and start to put them into action.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And thank you, Westward Whiskey, for the support this week. And we hope to see y'all on Wednesday.
Perfect. All right. I'll catch y'all later. Bye.